All right, guys, so we are going to now break down the meaty parts of this Disney release, being the Star Wars news and then the Marvel news. So there's big old servings of Star Wars stuff. Like, Star Wars fans rejoice because, we've had some tough times the past couple of years. The sequel trilogy getting sold to Disney, and that initial, just kind of timidness. We don't know what's going to happen. What's Disney going to do with, our beloved franchise and all this stuff, right? We just got out of the prequels. We just put those behind us, and now we're going to
Or the
Disney.
sequels.
And it's like, oh goodness, what's going on? And then Force Awakens comes out, and we're like, it was okay. It was pretty good. It was a pretty good movie. It was all right. Kind of like the first one, but it was whatever. And then, it all just kind of went downhill from there. But now we got Mandalorian. And everybody, I mean, it's safe to say, I think Mandalorian's been successful. Everybody loves Mandalorian. I think I could confidently say, right? Everybody's loving that. I know we've been loving it.
Yeah.
So we've got just a buku amount of Star Wars news dropping. They are coming out with their first thing they teased at the top of the press conference here, whatever, was that they're going to end up having like 10 shows or movies related to Star Wars in relation to Disney Plus or somehow, and just in general. Because not everything was Disney Plus related during this thing. It was just like a big Disney event, but a lot of it is Disney Plus because that's their primary focus now, is direct to consumer content. And I don't know if you watched the whole thing, but it was all of their presenters were like DTC, our DTC plans, our direct to consumer this and that. Like, they just want to milk Disney Plus because, like I said, $7 billion a year or more. Pretty good. So it's no surprise. But as far as the Star Wars stuff goes, we got pretty much these 9 announcements here. I'm gonna, just in an effort to save time for everybody, I'm gonna go through, break down these things, and we're gonna discuss what really just stands out to us and what's our whistle a little bit. All right, so we got, of course, the Ahsoka series. I think this one is probably not a surprise. Right after seeing her debut in Mandalorian, this was probably the I don't know. This came as no shock to me. Let's say. Then we got a Rangers of the New Republic, which is with. They gave literally no details on it, really. But my guess with this is like obviously going to be related to like the Gina Carano character, because they said that this is going to be, this and Ahsoka are set in the same time period as Mandalorian. That was confirmed. So my assumption
with crossovers too. Did I read or hear that?
Yeah, so I called that. If you go back a week or two ago, I said this is the MCU, the Mandalorian Cinematic Universe. All right.
Yeah.
Bam. Here it is. That's what we said. The Avengers team ups are going to be happening. I think to everyone's surprise, just to go back here, everyone was under the assumption that they were making a Boba Fett series. Not here. Everyone kind of assumed there would also be a Bo-Katan series. Not here. So my guess with that, off the top, is that going forward, once Mandalorian kind of completes its Baby Yoda and the Empire trying to take him arc, unless that's kind of just always going to be, this back and forth kind of thing, I just feel like it could get kind of stale after a while. But my guess is that Boba Fett and Bo-Katan are going to be pretty much like recurring characters in The Mandalorian,
I hope so.
Yeah, and it makes sense because why would you? Because I always thought this too. For one, I never really thought a Boba Fett show would be very interesting by itself. I was kind of prior to seeing how cool they made Boba Fett in Mandalorian, though, I do gotta say. But at the same time, why have another show about Boba Fett if you already got the Mandalorian? Why have a Bo-Katan show if you already have the Mandalorian? Why not just that be the show? The Mandalorian is a show about Mandalorians. There you go. So that's my kind of general, like, I don't know, 5-head idea. That's what the Mandalorian is just going to evolve into being, just a big Mandalorian show, So maybe season 3 and 4 is like Mando's helping Bo-Katan retake Mandalore and stuff like that, whatever. That's kind of where I'm thinking my headspace is at with that. But I think with this, probably going to be Gina Carano, maybe the X-wing pilot who keeps popping up and who gave her, just like things like that. Who knows? Maybe Ming-Na Wen maybe her character and Boba Fett will, like, pop up in this too and help him out with some stuff. Maybe Bill Burr will pop up. Like,
The logo looks very Top Gun.
It does. I imagine it could be, well,
like a Star Wars version.
But I feel like Top Gun in space is probably going to be Rogue Squadron.
That's true.
You know what I mean?
That's very true.
Like, and I was going to get to that one later, but Patty Jenkins like coming out directing a Rogue Squadron movie.
Yep.
I mean, come on, that's pretty awesome. That's very compelling news. We got a Lando series coming. They didn't straight up confirm that our boy Childish Gambino is going to be coming back, but I mean, why would he not?
Yeah,
I don't see why they wouldn't. Like,
I hope they can get him. He seems to be like, I love the dude. He's great. Community is one of my favorite shows ever. And I hope they can get him, but he seems to be kind of like
hard to get.
He has his things that he wants to do, and like he if he gets creatively, if he's not into it, he doesn't. He doesn't just do things just to do them. So I hope that they give him a compelling reason to come back and play the character and actually be in this or be this lead for the series.
I gotta feel like they wouldn't be announcing this if they didn't already have this lined out.
Yeah,
I don't think they'd make Lando without him, and I don't think they would like. They're not gonna pull a Warner Brothers, you know.
But I also feel like, why wouldn't they just have announced then? You know, they announced the creative. Like, why would they not just be like, and Donald Glover will be reprising his iconic role that he, started in. It would be awesome. It would be awesome to see a Lando series that played off the present with a younger one with Donald Glover, but also have like flashback between the future and then have Billy D in it as well, and have them. I think that would be really cool.
Kind of like story time stuff. Like,
sure,
like the adventures, like some adventures here tie back to past adventures, and you cut to Gambino.
Yeah, exactly.
True.
My question is, I guess, mainly with this, because like I don't know where they're really going to go with this, because Lando's one of those characters that like I don't know, I feel like the most we really got fleshed out with him really was in the Han Solo movie.
Yeah,
he just kind of popped up here and there. We didn't know too much about him in the original trilogy and stuff, and then he only makes a very brief appearance in Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah.
So, well, I'm more curious as to what timeline this will be set in, and if Alden Ehrenreich's Han Solo is going to pop up in it, because Alden Ehrenreich has been asked about. If there's been a lot of fans actually who finally decided to get off their high horse and watch the Han Solo movie and realize the Han Solo movie was actually a good movie.
Pretty good.
Yeah. So now there's been a lot of people actually wanting them to continue them. There are petitions for like make Solo 2 happen, and it was like trending and all this stuff like numerous times now. And when he's been asked about it, and he pretty much just says, never say never, kind of coy. Just like could happen, maybe not. So I'd like to see it happen. I think it is very poised to expand on that in Disney Plus format, because they can get a lot done. Speaking to like not Lando, but I guess Lando, but Gambino being a very busy guy. With their stagecraft technology and being in that volume, they can get a lot done filming wise in a very short amount of time.
That's true.
So that is like hyper beneficial for, I mean, pretty much everybody. But like if someone with a very tight schedule, then come in, get it done, do tons of different set changes like very quickly, bam. So I don't know. I'm very curious as to when and if Solo is going to pop up in it, because I think the potential there is actually like really good for Solo to be successful.
I would hope so.
Yeah.
I would hope so.
Yeah, and they had good chemistry too, Alden Ehrenreich and Gambino.
Oh, yeah.
Like, and everybody wants to see like more adventures of those two together. I think anybody would. I would. Shit. Then we got the Bad Batch, which I watched the trailer for it because I was very busy during this press conference, so I had to go back and forth. But like I was watching it, but then I had to do stuff, and then I had to go back and watch stuff, and I finally got around to watching this. And I mean, it looks pretty good. Did you watch the little trailer for this?
I did not.
It's a continuation of it's really cool because like it's at the very end they throw up the Bad Batch logo, but you see the Clone Wars logo fade into the Bad Batch. So it's essentially a continuation of the Clone Wars series, but after Order 66. So they could
Yeah.
do a lot of cool stuff with it. So I'm not like the most world's biggest fan of the Clone Wars and Rebel series, though I did like them. There's just if you don't like filler episodes, it's not for you because
Yeah.
they have a lot of them. There's good stuff in there, but it
It was
comes
an animated show
yeah
that was on the Cartoon Network, so
yeah
it was intended for a
yeah.
younger audience,
It was
and
pretty
they
brutal,
sure.
though.
Yeah. The meaty stuff comes in small doses,
I mean,
Yeah.
it gets pretty intense
but
at
it is
times, though.
good. Yeah, like there's
It's
like
excellent. Yeah.
it's very good stuff, but there is a lot of filler. So, but I mean, this if it's anything like the last 4 episodes of Clone Wars that recently came out on Disney Plus, like I tell you what, did you ever get around to watching those? The last 4 episodes?
I tell you what, when Mando came out and so much has been tying into the Clone Wars and Rebels, I actually went back and just started. I'm making my way through Clone Wars, the whole series. So
Dude,
I'll get there one day. Hopefully, sooner rather than later. But
those
yeah, I'm
final
looking
4,
forward to it.
man. Whew, that's worth watching for sure. So
Yeah.
I'm interested to see where this goes because if it's anything, I don't know. It's at least it's another familiar timeline, but at least it's something that hasn't really been explored. What happened immediately after Order 66? You know what I mean? That's not something that's actually been shown. So that would be fun to see. Now this one
That looks cool.
has the most
Sounds
potential to me, but it also has the biggest risk of being a failure in a lot of ways. I'll get into it. No, let's just get into it now because there's only like one more I want to talk about after this. With this is the series we talked about before, but this was by the director. I can't remember the name, but where the articles came out saying there was going to be this female-led Star Wars thing and like unexplored timeline and all this stuff, and like this is that project that they were speaking of, and so it's supposedly going to be following a Sith acolyte and it's going to be set like at the very end of the High Republic. And the High Republic, this is going to be our first introduction into a live action High Republic. Because at first, the whole High Republic timeline has been developed for a new canon timeline to explore in books and comics and things like that. And it's set like 200 to 300 years before the original trilogy, I believe, or before. Is it before the prequels or the original trilogy? It's one of the two. I
Before
can't
the
remember.
prequels, I believe.
Yeah, whatever
Yeah.
it is, it's supposed to be Yoda being like 400 or 500 years old, if I remember
Mhm.
correctly, something along those lines.
Mm.
But either way, it's set prior to the movies, a couple hundred years back, and Yoda is actually like a character in like one of the books and things like that. So that's how we know his age. That's been confirmed.
Yeah, he's a little old.
Yeah, a little old, but we see how his baby Yoda, Grogu himself, is like 50, and he's still like a baby. So
Looking good for 50.
yeah.
Looking good.
But my thing with this is like I've always wanted a dark side driven story because the Sith are like my favorite thing about Star Wars. Like the Sith are the coolest thing. Okay, they got the cooler powers. I don't really care for them having to be stuck with red lightsabers. I find that kind of bland. Okay, let them have whatever color they want. Like,
Right.
it's just and it's a little on the nose. Like the bad guys got the red lightsabers. Oh, and they always wear black and they always got masks on. Like all whatever. And my worry with this though is that, and it's been like kind of I was talking to Rick about this off camera. Whenever, a lot of times in like the studio world and like when you're just telling a story and everything, it's oftentimes hard to get the audience to get behind a villainous character
Yeah.
because they're just going around doing bad things, right?
People,
just
don't want to see that. all
yeah,
the
and
time.
like a lot of people aren't just going to want to watch a Sith going around and killing people or doing whatever, right? So my worry is that they're going to make this a
Red-
story about a Sith who inevitably becomes good or is
like a
showing
redemption.
yeah, struggling with the light and the dark and like all this stuff. It's like pretty
Is
much stuff we've already seen before, like
is
Right.
this the anti-Anakin story? The opposite of
yeah,
what Anakin went through?
pretty
Yeah.
much. Yeah, and that's what I don't want to see because like if you're going to show and tell a Sith story, then show and tell a Sith story. You know what I mean? Like I want to see, like what made Palpatine become Palpatine. Like I want to see like what made Darth Maul become Darth Maul. I don't want to just like I don't know, like a kid glove version of a bad guy who's like, has an internal struggle and like, because that's what I feel like it'll be. I feel like it's gonna have that kind of aspect to it because, like I said, oftentimes this is why the good guy always wins in movies because no one wants to see the bad guy win, like
No.
in broad terms. That's why those movies don't typically happen, where it's just the bad
Did,
guy wins. You know?
did you ever watch the television show The Shield
No, I did
with
not.
Michael Chiklis?
Mm-mm.
That was an excellent show. They had bad guys that you kind of rooted for at times, but also at times were like, whoa, they're jumping, they're going way too far there. If they could balance it the way the Shield was balanced with having guys that are bad, they're just bad guys. There's no way around it. They were bad guys,
Mhm.
but they still somehow were able to get you. They were able to get you behind them in certain situations, but also, there were the things they did that were bad that you were just like, yeah, that's terrible. Um, so I think it's doable. People have done it and done it well. So I hope that they find that kind of balance for this.
It's definitely. I mean, Game of Thrones did it like
Yeah.
very well. There were plenty
True.
of a-hole characters that you just loved. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I mean, a lot of them too. If you look at like Jamie, like he ended up having that classic redemption arc for the most part.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert, but just
Yeah.
that kind of thing. But I mean, even like the characters like Tywin, he was just like a stern kind of a dick, but you kind of know where he was coming from. So it was like you kind of, in some ways, kind of agreed and liked him. I don't know. That's just my main worry with it, though, because we'll get into because I got another story that kind of back it up that kind of ties into the next one. We got some news about Kenobi here and our boy Hayden Christensen is going to be reprising the role of Darth Vader, um, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah,
Like in all
that is
honesty,
really cool.
they said that it's going to be the rematch of the century. So it kind of is going to be, I guess you could argue, kind of retconning A New Hope because they say, when they're fighting there at Obi-Wan's demise that, or and multiple times, they haven't seen each other in
Many years.
yes, many, many years, like many moons ago, right? And but I make the argument, I contend though, that depending on kind of how you weave it in, it can still fit you could still make it work with that long. I mean, you can still make it work. They could still have not seen each other for a very long time, but now it's just this was that last meeting. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? But I guess the whole like last time we met, you were the student, or I was the student, you were the master. Like that's the part that kind of gets bad because you gotta assume Vader's gonna win this fight. You know what I mean?
You would think so.
Vader already lost the other fight, so you can't really gonna have a rematch and lose again. Like it wouldn't
Neither
make
of
too
them are
much
gonna
sense knowing
die.
where Vader goes. Like,
Neither of them will die because obviously we know from
exactly
Hope.
right. But what my theory craft for this with his inclusion is either going to be that he's not in it a lot, or maybe Obi-Wan is like trying to save him in some way, still trying to bring him back to the light side, and that would have him be a much more substantial character, and that would end up inevitably leading to the final altercation where Obi-Wan is like he's gone.
Yeah.
Like
Dips out.
there's no more saving him. I'm gonna go look over your son, you dick. Okay, and
Yeah.
I'm out. Like peace. I feel like that could kind of happen.
I'm really interested how they're going to work Hayden Christensen into this because I'm curious if we're going to get scenes with Darth Vader without his helmet on.
That's what I
If
was
we're going to
hoping.
get scarred Hayden Christensen, I don't know. Talking through, I just don't know. It's very interesting to me that they made a point of announcing the Hayden Christensen. I mean, it's great. I'm really excited for it because I'm really curious to see what Hayden Christensen can do underneath the direction of, for lack of a better way to put it, not George Lucas. I think his acting in those first three movies was kind of critiqued, and it was critiqued by me as being kind of stunted. But I've also heard that a lot of that had to do with the way that George
Oh yeah.
directed the movie and the kind of
Oh,
the
yeah.
way that George wanted them to play it. So I'm really curious, free of those constraints, how Hayden Christensen will do because I think I've heard he's a pretty good actor. Otherwise,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
so I'm excited to see him get the chance to really show that he can, give a performance in a realistic way rather than kind of that however it came off in those movies. So I'm glad about that. I'm just really curious about how why he specifically is coming back when you've got a character that, for the most part, you don't see without his mask on, and talks through James Earl Jones's voice. So,
right.
you know,
I have two things because Rick kind of brought up the same thing we were earlier today. One, bringing Hayden back would give them the opportunity to do flashbacks with like a younger, you know, when they were doing Jedi Knight stuff.
Sure.
It would also, I think this is probably the most. I don't know, you could take it or leave it with this one, but like the fans just knowing it's Hayden under the suit kind of lends you more of an attachment to it. You know, it gives it a little more weight, you know, because like you'll like that like if Vader confronts Obi-Wan in this, like you as an audience member know it's Anakin and that Anakin that he cut in half, you know, like you know it's him. So it adds a little bit more weight to it in that sense. But because like Star Wars isn't one that's ever really done flashbacks, so maybe they will, maybe they won't. I could see him doing it with this in particular, just to kind of flush out this like story, like their story a little bit more, if that's where they're going. But with Vader, I gotta say, because this was there's always been, this goes back to my previous point about having like a villain-led show, right? Because people always want, like, have said like they would love to see a Vader, and I would love to see this too, just saying, but they would like to see a Vader like movie where he is going around and hunting down the remaining Jedi after Order 66. It sounds like a great movie if you're a Star Wars fan and a Vader fan, but like I said, with the whole villain-driven thing, and it's kind of hard to get mass audiences to kind of be a part of it, who just wants to watch Darth Vader traveling the galaxy, murdering Jedis? You know what I mean? It's not a super compelling thing for, you know, just everybody. Like, we might think it's cool, but I don't know, does like your mom and your grandma and everyone else just want to go watch a movie where Darth Vader goes around just
like violently killing people?
Yeah, you know, well, like I would love to watch it, but yeah, it's just not something that really sells, and that's why like we'll obviously kind of like never get that kind of movie. But I think one thing they could do if they're bringing Hayden back for this, and this is like really just wishful thinking, right? But they could do that kind of thing post this series, right? Because now if they're setting up this Obi-Wan thing in that timeline, let's say they continue it on because we know Vader doesn't die, right? Like we know when Vader dies. He's not going to die here. What if they were to like bring in and canonize like Starkiller? Because you could get our boy Sam Witwer back, and you could actually do the Starkiller Darth Vader kind of going around hunting down the last of Jedi, but by virtue of the Starkiller, you know, Force Unleashed kind of story where he has the secret apprentice, and you get to learn like that Vader like wants to eventually like take down the Emperor. So like it actually would create a lot more character depth for the Anakin and Vader character, because you'd be able to showcase the struggle that Anakin was having with being pulled to the light by wanting to kill Darth Sidious, you know, and they orchestrate that through having Starkiller as his apprentice, and like, you know what I mean? I think that would work really well if they did it with that, because then you could just see the humanity in Anakin and just kind of flesh out, you know, Anakin and Vader like a lot more, because we see Vader, but we really don't know a whole lot about Vader and what he was going through as Vader that whole time. We know Anakin, but we never really got to. I don't know. I think that would be really cool, and that's just a way to get around it. And with bringing back Hayden, maybe they're looking more into the future, doing stuff like that. You know,
that'd be cool.
That would give Hayden a lot more to do.
Yeah, for sure.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
So well, and they've already said that this series is kind of like a one-off. This is not going to be an ongoing series with multiple. This is going to be like a mini series. Mm-hmm. So yeah, if Ewan McGregor has agreed to come back and do these like 6 or 8 episodes, however long it is, and then he's maybe done at that point, then this does give them a way to continue that series in a different form with Hayden, if Hayden is going to stick around.
Mm-hmm. And like I said, dude, they modeled the Starkiller character off Sam Witwer. Like his whole likeness, Sam Witwer is Starkiller, and Sam Witwer is still a part of the Star Wars family because he does the voice for both Darth Sidious and Darth Maul in the Clone Wars. So
Yeah.
he's a very familiar in this neighborhood, and I'm sure he'd love. I know he wants to play Star Killer in live action. Like he's said it
Why wouldn't
before.
you?
Like so, I would love to see it, and I think Disney Plus and bringing Hayden back with people like Filoni, and like especially with someone like Filoni who is very familiar with all of this stuff that we're talking about here. He's a sweaty like the rest of us. It's something that could happen. It's something that happened. But Rick, John, we broke down. I just went through all of them, and again, we had the Rogue Squadron one, but we already talked about that. That was the last one I was going to talk about. What do you guys, what stands out to you? We're going to wrap up the Star Wars segment here. Which one stands out to you? Which one are you looking most forward to? We already knew the Cassian Andor one was coming, so there's we know that's there. There's a couple on here we didn't really talk about because I just don't know too much about them, so kind of get them out there.
I'm looking forward to Kenobi and the Acolyte. I think the Acolyte will be a cool, different perspective, like you were kind of mentioning, for a Star Wars show, series, whatever you want to call it. Seeing it from the dark side versus the light side. But the Obi-Wan Kenobi thing, I think the main thing with that is just Hayden Christensen and seeing like where the story goes, what happens, what they do.
I'm with you, man. I think those.
That's it.
Those are mine too. Like,
yeah,
100%.
Not looking forward to Lando for some reason. Like when I saw that, I was just like, oh.
I'd be much more excited if they would have, if you would have switched out those 5 letters and put the 4 letters of Solo.
Yeah.
Like I don't know. I would have thought that would have been, because then like we could have just had Lando pop up in it and like I don't know.
Yeah. Do more with Han Solo.
I'd like to see more in that
enough
world.
shit.
Yeah, especially given how they ended it with spoiler alert, Darth Maul popping up at the end. I mean, come on. Like I want to see that explored more. So just do that. Like I don't know. They left it open. Just do it.
Yeah.
Which one or two or whatever stand out to you, John?
I'm having a hard time picking. I'm glad to see they've got the Mandalorian universe that you talked about a couple weeks ago coming to fruition. I'm really hyped about Lando. I always loved the character of Lando. He was Han Solo was my favorite Star Wars character, and he was Han Solo's best friend in that competitive kind of way. But they were still buddies, and so I'm looking forward to a Lando series. Though my thoughts on Rogue Squadron are, how in the world did WB let Patty Jenkins go over to Disney? Like, I mean, you would have thought they would have had her wrapped up, because I'm hoping this does not mean she's done with the Wonder Woman character. I hope we get a 3rd Wonder Woman movie, but we'll see.
We're supposed to get 2 more from her.
Are we?
Her spinoff and then her Wonder Woman 3.
Right.
We'll see.
One.
We'll
I
see.
hope this doesn't interfere with that. But yeah, all the news out of this was, I was talking with a friend of mine at work the other day, and I said, Mandalorian has kind of reignited my love of Star Wars. I was really disenfranchised with the series after the sequel trilogy, and I really didn't. I just didn't care too much about it. I felt like maybe time had passed.
It's just getting started.
The Mandalorian is got me real hyped for it, and I'm hoping whoever the creative team, I know it's Filoni, right? And
Filoni and Favreau are in charge. Yeah, they're in charge of the Rangers and Ahsoka show. Favreau is like, those are under him by virtue of them being connected to Mandalorian. But the rest they're kind of they're on their own.
I'm hoping Kathleen Kennedy is leaning on them or towards them or keeping them in the loop on what's going on with the rest of the universe, because they seem to have just such a clear vision and a vision that lines up with what I think, the feel of what Star Wars is. I felt like that. I didn't feel like the sequel movies felt like Star Wars, and everything they've done has felt like Star Wars. And going back and watching the Clone Wars series, it feels like Star Wars. So I hope that they at least have some input, even as just like general consultants on the shows, to show them, maybe you do this here to get that little flair for it. Anyway, that's a long way of saying I have a hard time picking just one. If I had to pick 2, I mean, I guess I'm going Mandalorian tie-ins, because I love that universe so much right now. much.
It's true.
Yeah. I mean, not to mention, I didn't talk too much about it because it was like the least surprising one on here, but that being Ahsoka. But I am very excited to see where they go with that show because, like, the way
Thrawn
that
and
Rosario portrayed her and the way she was written in that episode of Mandalorian, I mean, it was
Awesome.
arguably better than anything in the Clone Wars. Like,
yeah.
it was awesome. I really liked it.
It
So,
was a great episode.
Well, and
yeah.
my biggest question right now is we have these announcements, but we know Obi-Wan is just the one season, guess, based on what I've heard. I'm really curious if Ahsoka and Andor and Rangers, if those are all going to be multi-season shows, and what the kind of are they thinking about these in terms of 5 seasons? Are they just open-ended? I hope whatever they finalize, they have a good beginning, middle, and end, because as we saw with the sequel trilogy, when they leave it open-ended without an idea of the overarching story, it doesn't work out so well.
Yeah. Well, and to your point, they have someone like Dave Filoni there who is the perfect Kevin Feige of Star Wars to
Yep.
have like on your team. And like now
Yeah.
that he's like gotten his, put his foot in the water with live action, we've seen what he can do on Mandalorian. And I mean, as far as the storytelling and just lore, like knowledge he has with Star Wars, like it would be, I don't know, foolish not to utilize him as a resource when he's already, essentially having some creative input on at least 3 of these shows. I mean, like, that's your guy. Like,
Yeah.
He's
Favreau and
made that
Filoni
clear.
have been just killing it on Mandalorian. So, I mean, you got him there, use him, So,
Yeah, the one last thing, sorry, I know we're trying to get through these quick, but the
no,
one
you're
last
good.
thing I will say is, and we mentioned this off stream, is the Jedi influence over the Star Wars universe has definitely been muted in this
Mhm.
announcement. I mean, you've
Yeah.
got 10 shows slash movies being announced, and really, as far as I can tell, besides besides Ahsoka, who is left the Jedi Order. I mean, that's going to be pretty Jedi, or at least Jedi-like influenced. But the only other one is the Acolyte, maybe, and maybe that's where you get actual Jedi showing up, and having more involvement in the universe, which is surprising considering the Jedi are such a central figure in the
Well, yeah, I
universe so
mean,
far.
to that point, there's only 3 shows with immediately, like, in your face Force user based shows, because
Sure.
we got Obi-Wan, Acolyte, and Ahsoka. Those are the only 3, but I mean, Obi-Wan's gonna be a one-off who we're familiar with for the most part anyway. We know what's gonna happen with that. And then, yeah, Ahsoka and Acolyte, not necessarily Jedi related, so we'll just have to see where they go.
And and I should clarify, I'm not saying that they need to have Jedi and they need to have the Force in every show. I don't think that at all. I think Rogue Squadron could be an awesome movie, and you might never even hear the word Force mentioned in it. Um, and I think you could fall back on that crutch of using the Force and Jedi in everything. I'm glad to see that they're not doing that. That they're not oversaturating the market with that stuff. I just found it interesting because it is such a big part of
No,
the
yeah.
lore.
Yeah.
I agree. I mean, I love the Force. I like lightsabers, dude.
Oh yeah.
Right.
I
Yep.
like when Ahsoka came in the Mandalorian, like I don't care what anybody was saying, it felt real nice to hear those lightsabers just fucking ignite
Pop. Yep.
right to
Yeah.
start the show. Like I was
Hmm.
like, okay, we're
So
right
good.
in this, man. So like I'm totally cool, and I like that they're definitely taking the approach of not just cramming Jedi's and stuff down your face or Sith alike. But I mean, yeah, man. I'm also at the same time very excited to see. I mean, just the Ahsoka show and the Obi-Wan. After this, I feel like I've just the sequel trilogy didn't give me anything that I wanted as far as like Jedi, Sith, lightsabers, nothing. Like, so like,
Speaking of
uh,
sequel trilogies, I just started reading Heir to the Empire, the Timothy Zahn
mhm.
Thrawn trilogy book from way back when. Man, I tell you what, I can't believe that book existed and they went the route they did with the sequel trilogy. That book has been excellent so far. I'm 12, 13 chapters in. I can't put it down. It's an amazing book, and it makes me even more depressed about where the sequels went.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing too. Speaking of Thrawn, I mean, we know that's where Ahsoka is after. So I mean, like again, that's very compelling to me. So
Oh
I mean,
yeah.
it's gonna be great to see, that storyline continued in general. So I'm looking forward to pretty much all these things on here. But again, definitely Alkalite and Obi-Wan are my top two, and then Ahsoka being the third, I'd have to say. And then obviously just a continuation of the rest. Andor, I'm excited to see, but I know it's probably just going to. I just feel like with Andor, there's not too many places they can really go with it. However, I am very excited to see if they maintain, like I said last week, that whole gray area of the rebels have to do dirty stuff. That'll be good to see. So as long as they stick with that, I'm cool. So question is, guys, what did you think about all this news coming out? Do you think this was Kathleen Kennedy's swan song, if you will? Do you think she came out here and was like, just mic drop this stuff, and then she's gonna leave Lucasfilm? Maybe didn't talk about that, but let's speculate with that. Do you think this is her going away? Like this is her legacy for being the head of Lucasfilm potentially? Could be, or could she stay on? I mean, I could see someone like Jon Favreau taking over Lucasfilm one day, maybe. He's got a good head on his shoulders. He knows what he's doing with Mandalorian. It could happen. I don't know. Let us know what you think about all this stuff down in the comment section. It's too much to get into. Let us know down in the comment section below.